Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schwab Coaching. My name is Cameron May. I'm a Senior Manager of Trading and Derivatives Education here at Schwab, and this is Getting Started with Thinkorswim. And today I wanted to address an obstacle that some stock investors, stock traders encounter in their efforts to build out their self-directed portfolio. And that is they have a great trade idea, they know what they want to buy, but they can't seem to find stocks that look like that thing that they have in their head. So today we're going to be talking about building your very first scan for stocks on the Thinkorswim platform. We're going to be using a tool called the Stock Hacker. Should be a great discussion. Really looking forward to this one. Before we can get to that, though, let me first of all say hello to everybody who's already chatting in. I've been keeping an eye on those chats. I see a bunch of familiar names. I see one or two, they're new. But hello there, Mark and Jackson. We have Robert, Jenny, Jackie, Richard, Marcus, Kay Boja, and everybody else. Thanks for joining us week after week. We always do appreciate your attendance and your contributions to these discussions. If you happen to be among those who are here for the very first time, I want to welcome you as well. And if you're watching on the YouTube archive after the live stream is concluded, well, enjoy the recording. It's a great way to watch these webcasts, but you're certainly invited to join us in the live stream if you'd like to be here in that audience. This is a Wednesday webcast series, and we kick things off promptly at 2 Eastern time. Now, for the benefit of those who are here in the live audience, I also want to let you know that I'm being joined by my very good friend, Scott Thompson. He's hanging out in the chats today. He's going to be watching for any questions, and if I can't get to those questions, Scott's there to help me out. So Scott and I have been working together now it's been more than 20 years. He brings a ton of experience to this discussion. Thanks for having my back there, Scott. Scott and I would also like to issue an invitation to everybody watching, whether live or on the archive, to follow your favorite Schwab presenters on social media. You can find us on X, you can find us on LinkedIn, you can find Scott there on X. Just look for @ScottThompsonCS. My handle on X is @CameronMayCS. And if you find and follow me there, you reply to my posts, I just try to reply right back to you. It's the place to connect with your favorite presenters in between these live streams, or you can hop over to linkedin.com/in/CameronMayCS, find, follow, and reply to me there. But let's get right into this discussion. And of course, as we do, we're going to be talking about stock trading, stock investing, which certainly carries risks. So bear these important disclosures in mind. All corporate or issuer names and market data shown are for illustrative purposes only and are not a recommendation, offer to sell, or a solicitation of an offer to buy any security. Schwab does not recommend the use of technical analysis as a sole means of investment research, and investing involves risks, including loss of principal. All right, so let's set the agenda for today's discussion. Very simple agenda. We're going to put ourselves in the shoes of that stock trader who knows the kinds of stocks they'd like to buy, they just can't seem to find them. So we're going to be using the Stock Hacker tool on Thinkorswim to go through the process for building a custom scan for stocks according to the characteristics that are important to that trader or that investor. So let's go right to Thinkorswim, and as we do, I'm going to point something out here. We're going to be using the Thinkorswim desktop platform today. And somebody asked in the chats here, I keep an eye on the chats before I launch things. They asked, hey, are we going to be covering Thinkorswim Web as well? There are actually 3 versions of Thinkorswim. There's desktop software, there's the mobile platform for your phone, but there's also something called Thinkorswim Web, which you can access just through an internet browser. I'm not going to be going through Thinkorswim Web today, but I do have a suggestion for you. But let me show 2 things. First of all, I want to show how to get Thinkorswim Desktop, which we are going to be using. And then I want to show how to get support for Thinkorswim Web, which we're not going to be using. All right. So first of all, getting Thinkorswim Desktop, it's actually trading software that can be downloaded free of charge from within your Schwab online account. Just log into schwab.com, go to the trade tab. It's really easy here, I think. It's a pretty direct path here. Click on the trade tab, and right here you'll see Thinkorswim Desktop. Click on that, and then right down below you'll look for the computer icon. It's a monitor. There it is. There's Thinkorswim Desktop, and you just click Download Thinkorswim Desktop. If you want to learn more about the platform, you can just click right here. Learn more about Thinkorswim Desktop. Now, you'll also notice there's an introduction to Thinkorswim Web, but we do provide webcasts for Thinkorswim Web. So let me make a suggestion for you as we set ourselves to go talk about desktop. If you want to learn about Thinkorswim Web or all sorts of other things that we're not going to be covering in today's webcast, make sure that you are subscribed to our Trader Talks YouTube channel. So you can actually subscribe by going down below the video right now click on the subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything. All right, it only takes a second to do that. But our Trader Talks Schwab Coaching webcast channel on YouTube is where you can join these live streams like the one that I'm hosting right now. You can find playlists, like later I'll show you how to find the playlist for this Getting Started with Thinkorswim webcast series. Or you can do keyword searches. For example, let's say you had an interest in learning about Thinkorswim Web. And I'm not talking about Thinkorswim Web today, but we have, and we do, just type in web right here. Hit enter, and we should see, yep, there's Brent Moore's webcast series about using Thinkorswim Web. And you can click the full playlist right there. All right, so lots of resources. But let's go to Thinkorswim Desktop. So once you've downloaded Thinkorswim through that process, that area that I showed you on Schwab, it's going to create an icon on your computer's desktop. Or it'll just move Thinkorswim into your computer start menu. But in any case, launch Thinkorswim and your icon is going to look like a little splash. It's a little square with a splash in it. You might be able to see that right down here at the bottom of my screen. But when you launch Thinkorswim, you're going to get a login screen that looks like this. And there's that splash logo that I was mentioning. And the first thing that I'll point out here is that it's going to give you the option to access your live trading accounts or to use what's called paper money. We can just toggle between those two. And then you just log in using your Schwab credentials, your same username and password that you would use on schwab.com. But that loads up this platform, right? I'm ready now. What I've done here is as I've launched that and I've clicked on the scan tab up here at the right, and that'll take you right to where we find ourselves right now. The first thing that I want to do though, because it's going to look a little bit different to you, I'm going to change the background color here. Sometimes you'll see Thinkorswim that's black. Sometimes you'll see it's primarily a white background. That's just a user preference thing. My preference is the white, so I'm going to show you how I switch that. Come up here, a little gear icon. I'm going to go to application. This is the Thinkorswim application. Application settings. Let's change its look and feel to the light color scheme. That's what it's going to look like. Let's apply that setting. That's it. That's why mine might look a little bit different than yours the first time you launch it. But now let's get into this scan function. And again, let's put ourselves in the shoes of that stock trader, that stock investor who already knows what it is they're looking for, but they don't seem to be able to find it. They've looked through 100 different stocks and can't seem to find one that meets the description of the kind of stock that they're interested in buying. Well, what we need to do here on what's called our stock hacker is tell Thinkorswim what we're looking for, and then Thinkorswim will go find that. All right. Now, I will acknowledge here, as we're looking at that scan function, there are a row of tabs, sub-tabs here that would allow us to do, let's say, an option scan, something like, I'm not going to be going into any of these other sub-tabs here. We're going to be staying on the stock hacker. However, the skills that we pick up today will translate very nicely, prepare us very well for using those other hacker or scan tools. All right. So let's just go left to right, top to bottom, acquainting ourselves with a scan function. So we've hit the first row, the second row, third row has the first things that we can customize for this scan specifically. First thing we can do is we can direct where we want that scan to be conducted. Do we want to look in all stocks? Do we want to just look in a specific sector? Maybe we want to look at an index of stocks like the S&P 500 and see which one of those might carry the characteristics that the trader or investor is looking for. Right now we're set to, let's say, scan in all stocks. But if we click on this, we get a pop-down menu. And you'll notice we can scan by industry. We can scan by public watch lists. We can scan through personal watch lists. But let's just come down here to maybe in alphabetical order to maybe the S&P 500 as an example. So if I select that, scan in, and then I put in a whole bunch of additional criteria here, it's only going to look for stocks that meet the criteria that are also in the S&P 500. Additionally, we could add another layer here. We could say, hey, look at the S&P. That's going to be my first requirement, but I also want to intersect with another group of stocks. So for example, maybe I want to look in maybe a specific industry like, I don't know, technology. We could just select all information technology, and now our scan would only be looking in technology stocks that are in the S&P 500. I'm not going to do that though. Let's just clear this filter. Let's just change our category back to all stocks. And by the way, if we're in here tinkering around with the scan tool, we just want to wipe the slate clean again, we can always just come right over here to the right and choose reset. It's going to ask us, are we sure? I'm just going to click yes. And it just resets it back to the scan defaults. All right, but let's scan in all stocks today, at least initially. And let's start to tell the system what kinds of stocks we're interested in. So I don't know what kind of stocks you'd be interested in. I don't know, I have a big audience watching, about 100 people right now, probably going to be hundreds or thousands that watch afterward. But let's just put in some example criteria. And by default, there are going to be 3 different criteria that can be chosen here. Now, each of these relate to stocks. So as I come over here to our little drop-down menu, let me click on this, and it shows us that we have a range of different criteria that can be chosen. So for example, how about we choose the market capitalization? Notice market capitalization is denominated in millions of dollars. So if I were to put in a minimum here of 5,000, what we'd be looking for are stocks that are at least $5 billion in total market capitalization. If you're not familiar with market cap, that's just basically the size of the company. You've heard the phrase small cap, mid cap, large cap. Small cap, well, the calculation of the capitalization is just how many shares times the price per share. So if we have a company that has 1 million shares out there and they're priced at $100 per share, that's a $100 million company in market capitalization. Well, let's put in, let's say, an example of $5 billion. Now, as I enter this, I'm about to hit enter on my keyboard. I want you to keep an eye on this next field, this histogram display. So I'm going to hit enter, and you'll notice now we have this little blue window, little box here, that is showing us sort of visually a distribution of the size of the companies and how many of those companies meet our criteria. And if I'm seeing most of that distribution in gray, most of that histogram in gray, it means that most of these companies fall outside of our criteria. In this case, they're about this many $5 billion companies. Another thing that we can tell if we look over a little bit further is specifically how many companies are there out there. If you think that $5 billion companies, that sounds like a lot of money, that sounds uncommon. No, they're actually over 2,800 companies of that size. All right, so we're narrowing the field. We need to narrow it further. I don't want to make a list of 2,800 companies to look through. So let's enter our second criteria, and let's say that our investor here is maybe also, possibly they're a value investor. Let's use a traditional value metric like the PE ratio. So I'm going to come over here to our stock menu. Let's scroll on up in alphabetical order to PE. It stands for price to earnings. And how about we put in a minimum of 8 and a maximum of 20? So specifically, this PE ratio, if you're not familiar with it, we take the current price of the stock and divide it by its earnings over the last 12 months. And so let's say if we have a company that generated $10 in earnings over the last 12 months, currently priced at $100 per share, well, 100 divided by 10 would give us a PE ratio of 10. And for some, it might be an indication of value. So if we have a company that's generating lots of earnings and yet its price is still low, maybe that's an indication, certainly not a guarantee, but possible indication of value. And so maybe our trader doesn't want to invest in something where they're paying a very high price compared to the earnings. Well, for others, they prefer not to pay a very low price compared to earnings before. And I know that can sound counterintuitive. You might say, well, Cameron, what do we care if the price is really low compared to really strong earnings? Well, for some, that might be a little bit of a red flag. I can't speak for everybody, but if our PE ratio is very low, sometimes that's interpreted as meaning that our trader or our investor may not be impressed by last year's earnings because maybe they're not expecting much out of the company next year. All right. And this might be a bit of an earnings or value trap in their eyes. In any case, let's say that we're looking for earnings or a PE ratio of 8 to 20, and you can see that there are about 2,100 companies out there that fall in that range. So if there are 2,100 companies that have a PE between 8 and 20, and there are 2,800 with a market cap of 5 billion, there's going to be some overlap of those two groups. It's going to be less than 2,800. So we're narrowing that field again. And by the way, I can also see our histogram to show the comparatively narrow field that actually have this PE between 8 and 20. Now, if we like, instead of entering numbers, we can actually just click on the histogram window and drag to the right to increase our upper number, or I can drag to the left to decrease that lower number. I'm going to position those both. Let's just put them back at 8 and 20. But I do want to point out that that can be done. It can also help us identify a culprit if we've entered a criteria that turns out to be more restrictive than we intended. If we're not finding stocks and we see that this window is a little tiny window, it's probably the problem with the scan that we've created. All right, let's add one more criteria here. How about we look for yield, just dividend yield. So I'm going to choose yield here. And let's say that our would-be investors looking for these sort of mid to large cap companies with a PE ratio between 8 and 20 that also are paying dividends of at least, I don't know, let's say 2%, maybe up to a maximum of 6%. 2% is almost double the average dividend right now, but there are still 2,200 companies paying a dividend between 2 and 6. So we've already actually built what might be a serviceable scan for some people. Obviously, it's a limited list of criteria. There are probably going to be a lot of companies that meet all of these criteria, but let's run a scan. And as we do, I can see, yep, 603 companies. We probably need to narrow the field a little bit more. The problem is, MBH says, hey, is there a way to scan for securities that have $1 option strikes, that $1 strike increment? Yes, there is, but I'm not going to be going into that today. But that can be done through what's called the option hacker. Today, we're focusing on stock scans. But yeah, you can do that, MBH. You can just explore this. But let's narrow this scan a little bit further. But the problem is we've run out of, we've used all three of our menus. What do we do? Well, we can actually add additional, these are called filters. We can add more filters using this plus sign right up here. So I'm going to click on Add Filter. And there are a number of different types of filters. Yes, we can do stock filters. We can do option filters. We can do what are called fundamental filters, which are actually, that's where we're kind of digging through the quote unquote health of the company behind the stock. We're looking through its performance numbers. We can do what's called a study filter, and we will. We're going to be using some of these today. A study filter refers to a technical or a chart study. Yes, we can scan by what the chart is doing. But for right now, let's add another stock filter just to show that we can do it. There we go. Now we have a fourth. And how about this one? Let's say that our investor prefers that the last trading price be at least 50 bucks on our stock. Why 50? Just because it's a convenient number for me to use. All right. Let's add also one of those fundamental filters. So again, a fundamental filter is ignoring what the stock is doing, what the chart of the stock is doing, or what the stock itself is doing. It's looking at the company behind the stock. And so for this example, what if we want to see, well, is this even a profitable company? What are its earnings? So I'm going to click on my fundamental menu here now, and let's go down to earnings per share. Over, what does TTM stand for? Over the trailing 12 months. So last year, what did this company generate in profits? Not every company is profitable. What if we just say, I don't want to see them unless they're generating, at least $1 in profits. Let's just use that as our minimum. And the more profitable, the better. I'm not going to put a high end on this requirement. So this is going to be narrowing that potential field of trade candidates further and further and further. It's highly customizable. Feel free to put in whatever criteria is important to you. But I did also want to put in a study filter, a chart filter. So let's do that. Let's go up here. And as we do this, I'm going to really emphasize this filter is only available on the live platform. Remember when I showed that you can log into Thinkorswim and log in either to a practice account known as Paper Money, or you can access your live trading platform. This is an example. It's a demo. It's still a fake live trading platform, but this tool is only available on live. So I'll just make that point. Anyway, so let's add a study filter. And let's just say that our would-be trader here, they're looking for a stock that's, paying a dividend, apparent value, but with the stock market as strong as it has been, maybe they prefer that at least our company is keeping up with that performance, and they're looking for stocks where the price is right up near, let's say, 12-month highs. Here's how we might make that a requirement through a study filter. I'm going to go to the price performance menu. Look at all these others that we could do. These are all kinds of other technical tools that could be used. And yeah, we'll be using some more in just a moment. But let's go to price performance. Where is the price right now? And we're going to choose near highs, near high lows. This is a filter that lets us look for stocks that are trading either near highs for a given time frame or near lows. So I'm going to choose near high lows. And then you kind of just read through this like it's a sentence. And actually, to me, it's pretty straightforward. The current price of the stock is within a certain percentage of the 252, it says period. What's a period? Well, it's whatever this period is over here, a day, a week, a month. I'm going to leave that on day. So let's say we want the current price to be within 5% of the 252-day high. Why 252 days? It seems like such a random number. Well, we're talking about trading days, and there are about 252 trading days in a calendar year on average, 251, 252. Depends on how many holidays fall in that year. That is NYSE holidays. But this is basically just going to be looking for stocks that are trading within 5% of their 12-month highs. So we've just stacked up 6 different requirements. I don't know. Let's run the scan. Let's see out of all of the stocks trading on the major U.S. exchanges, how many of them meet all 6 of our criteria. Let's run that scan. And as that processes, let me check the chats here. Mark says, this is cool. I've never used the near high lows filter before. I tend to use filters that check against moving. That's interesting, Mark. You say you check against moving averages because that's something I want to do today. Now, you'll notice my little wheel is kind of turning here. Sometimes when I'm conducting a webcast, it can put a pretty good drain on my bandwidth and it slow down this scan tool. That's all right. We're learning how the scan works, but I took a look at this earlier this morning because I know this sort of thing happens. I prepare myself for these webcasts. And when I looked earlier, there are actually, I think about 60, 65 companies that met each of our criteria here. So from there, we could actually just select a stock and go have a look at it. There it is. It just took a moment. How many do we wind up with? Okay, right now, I think it's possibly due. Are we still fading on the markets? We were fading maybe an hour ago as I was preparing for this webcast. 39 companies. You got 39? Good. That means that you did this just as I did. So this is looking really through every stock out there. We could reroute this scan right now that since we've done this, we could reroute it just to look at like this, let's say the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ or a specific sector. But let's see what kind of a job this has done. What we'll know here is as we look down at the columns below, we can see all of these companies have a market cap of at least 5 billion. They're all paying dividends exceeding 2%. They all have a PE ratio falling between 8 and 20. You can kind of see that. And each one of these columns is sortable. So let's say our investor, maybe their highest priority is the yield. Not just the size of the company, but maybe the yield that the company is paying, the dividend. So we can click on any of these column headings, and it's going to reorganize our list of stocks according to that yield. Or we can do that with PE. We can just do that with any of these headings. I'm going to come back here. Let's reorganize these according to the market capitalization, and let's have a look at Bank of America. Let's see if it's up there within 5% of that 252-week high, in addition to meeting all the rest of our criteria. So I'm going to pop over here to charts for just a moment, and let's type in BAC. There we go. Is BAC is it within 5%? Certainly is. Yep, you can see at no point, no trading day of the last year has it been higher than it has reached just today. So the scan, it's doing its job. Am I saying that this is the scan for every trader? Nope. Nope. We're just acquainting ourselves with the tool today. Now we're going to be doing some additional tinkering with different versions of scans, but whenever the trader thinks they have a scan dialed in just right, it's kind of a headache if we then shut down Thinkorswim and then we come back in a week or a month and we're trying to remember how did we set up that scan? I liked that scan that I set up a week or a month ago. Wish I could just retrieve it. Well, we can't. We can actually just save the scan. If we go right up here to the upper right, click on this little 3 dots, 3 dashes, that's a menu. I'm going to click Save Scan Query, and we can just give this whatever name we want to. For me today, it was just an example scan, okay? But it might be more useful if you're at home to call it like a dividend value stock trading at highs scan or something like that that tells us exactly what we built it for. But if I just type in example scan right now, I can click Save, and then if I were to reset this, panic time, resetting it, I just wipe the slate clean. If I'm using other parts of the platform or I've shut the platform down and I come back and I want to rerun that scan, now I can just come back up to this menu. I can click on Load Scan Query, and this is a personal scan that I just created, and we can look for our example scan right there. And there's all of that work that we did, and it's ready to just run that scan again. There we go. Now, let's get a little bit deeper into this. Now, let me just check. I always prepare for these webcasts every time with a good list, an outline of session notes of things that I want to make sure that I cover. I'm just going to make sure that I've covered everything that I wanted to today. You know, one thing, while I'm on it, let me just make sure. Down here below, you probably noted that my columns match up pretty nicely with my scan criteria. It's because I made some customizations before the webcast started. But these columns are actually customizable. And for example, I can see that we have yield. Well, that's one of our criteria. I can see that we have market cap. That's one of our criteria. What about our earnings per share? I don't see EPS as one of our column headings. It's actually, I think it's tucked away over here to the right. But if it weren't, there it is right there. I can click on this little gear icon, and that allows me to customize the layout of this lower portion of the scan. So if I didn't have EPS, let's just suppose I didn't have it. It's not there anymore. Let's click on the little gear. Let's click Customize. Let's look for earnings per share, trailing 12 months, just like we added to our criteria. And let's add that to our layout. And by default, it's going to show up all the way over here to the right again. Let me move this up. I'm going to click the little up arrow, and that's going to position. How about if we put it up here next to market cap and yield? There's our earnings per share. Let's click OK. And now you'll notice right there, 3 dots, meaning it's trying to squeeze in. Yeah, I've added quite a few columns here. There's not quite enough space. We can create more space just by clicking and dragging on the margin between our column headings here. There's our earnings per share. Now added. You know what? I'm going to take it off again just to show you how that can be done. Let's customize again. And let's remove it. There we go. we're back to the layout that I had before. Wiley says, am I in a sharing mood today? We can share this scan. Yeah, let me pop up here. I'm going to share this scan query as currently constructed. Let's just call it example for today because it's a nice, easy word for me to use right now. And I can pop that over into the chat window. There we go. I'll also try to remember to add it to the video description after the webcast is over. But there you go, Wiley. And of course, a little reminder here that shared scans are not a guarantee as to the timing or accuracy. And of course, this is not like a perfect scan. It's just an example scan. Anyway, but let's further customize this. One thing that I like to point out, and we're going to be getting a little bit fancier here. Some people like to get a little bit fancy. They have a preferred approach to the markets. Let's talk about a technical approach to trading. As I go to our charts, you'll notice I have these two lines applied to our charts. If you're not familiar with these, Greg says if there are more than 50 results, how do we see the second page of 50 results? Good question there, Greg. What you can do right there on a scan, just show more. So instead of 50, crank that up to 200 and you'll see them. Or you can put in a custom number right there. All right, so if they're like 69, just change this to show 69, you'll see them all. You can just scroll further down. Anyway, but let's say that, that our would-be trader here is kind of a chartist. Maybe they use technical tools, and maybe they're looking for something like what we call a moving average crossover. Now, I don't intend to teach how to trade using a chart, but I'll just give you a quick introduction to this concept. So for some chartists, they'll use a combination of trend lines to identify possible turning points in a chart. And one common combination is using what's called a 10-day moving average. It's just what has the average price been over a 10-day period. And a 50-period moving average, which is what's been the average price over a 50-day period. So as an example, over the last 50 days, Bank of America has been $58 at the close on average. But just over the last 10 days, it has closed around $62. So for some traders, if they see that shorter term trend line strengthening and crossing above the longer term, not truly long term, but longer term, they might see this as a potential, let's say, entry signal. So for example, here's our shorter term trend crossing up above the longer term. That may be a signal that, hey, the stock is starting to get some new strength. Maybe it's going to go in a new direction. Not a guarantee, but that's a crossover. A 10-50 crossover is the terminology that we would use there. Well, Bank of America doesn't have a crossover today. Actually, the most recent one happened all the way back here. So what if our trader wants to find a more recent crossover, maybe one that's happened today or maybe within just, let's say, the last week? Let's add that to our scan. All right, I'm going to come down here. Let's replace this requirement of the stock price just being up there instead with a technical requirement that we have the shorter term trend line crossing above the 50. Now, one thing I should have mentioned with those moving averages is that trend is not the only potential approach for those. Sometimes they're used as possible price floors and price ceilings as well. That's okay. I just want to throw that out there. But how do we remove one of our criteria when we've already added it? Well, we can come over here and click on the little X and get rid of it. I could have just changed it. I want to show how to delete one. So let's add a study filter again, though. And in this case, though, we're going to do a custom study filter. So yeah, this is a little bit fancier. When we choose custom from that menu, we get this pop-up. And the pop-up is preparing for us to put in, let's say, a search through technical studies, but it doesn't know which study we're going to be using. So by default, it's just going to start with the first one in alphabetical order, which happens to be the ADX crossover. I don't need that. I'm just going to delete it. And instead, I'm going to add my own custom condition. So what we're going to look for is for a technical study known as a simple moving average. That was that trend line that I had applied to the chart. And a length on that moving average, let's look at the 10-day moving average. And what we want to see from that 10-day simple moving average is that it just crossed above another study. Which study? Another simple moving average. But in this case, we're looking for the 50. So we're looking for the 10-day moving average to cross above the 50-day moving average. Now I'm just giving, we are just scratching the surface of the power of this feature. So if you have a preferred technical indicator, get in here and experiment. It doesn't have to be a cross above. It can be a cross below for, let's say, bearish entries. It could be, we want to see, a certain indicator to be above or to already be greater than or less than another one. All kinds of different combinations we can do. But finally, down below, let's say we want this to have happened within the last not one day. That's probably too demanding. Let's say within at least the last 5 days. Now, by default, this is going to say bars. A bar just refers to the length of the chart, and we're going to be looking at daily. We're going to do a daily scan. So let's click Save and click OK. And so we can see the outcome here is we're looking for a simple moving average with a length of 10 to be crossing above a simple moving average with a length of 50 within the last 5 days. All right, so let's run that scan. This one, I don't know. Let's see what the results are. Let's click Scan. All right, we definitely have some results. Let's organize these largest to smallest. And actually, here's one, Accenture. Should we look at some? Let's look for some names that a lot of people might recognize. Cognizant, CTSH, right down here. How about we look at Accenture and see if this scan did its job? So it's supposed to be finding us a stock that meets all of our other criteria, that also just had that shorter term trend line cross above the longer term, and it did that. In this case, crossover happened within just a few days ago. What about CTSH? Yep, there's another one. Crossover happened just recently. Notice these are not happening up near highs because that was no longer a requirement of the scan. That was the requirement that we deleted in order to add this one. So guys, we've actually accomplished with that, we've accomplished what I set out to do today. I want to provide an introduction to the real power of this scan tool known as the Stock Hacker on Thinkorswim. It can be a frustrating experience to have an idea of what we're looking for and not be able to find it. So obviously lots of other features of this scan that you can get into and experiment with. I would encourage you to do that. Mark says there's a moving average crossover study where you can do that. Yep, Mark, I wanted to get fancier than just using the defaults. Mark's exactly right. He says there's a moving average crossover study where you can do this same check without using the custom option. Absolutely true. Yep, we could have done it. Just come here and instead of selecting study, we just look for the crossover and choose from that menu. Yep. Let's see. Lawrence says, "Hey, Lawrence, very, very welcome. Definitely my pleasure to bring these webcasts to you. But it's time for me to let you go. Thank you for giving me your time today. As you go to enjoy our next webcast, and we actually have a couple of them still on the slate for the rest of the day, I want to actually just suggest that you take full advantage of the educational offerings available to you from Schwab, beginning with, if you're new to Schwab, if you're new to our Trader Talks channel on YouTube, make sure you're a subscriber. So you can pop down below the video stream right now, click on the subscribe button. It only takes a second. It doesn't cost anything to do that. But our Trader Talks channel is where we house all of our webcasts. You can join our live webcasts right here. You can find our playlists of previous webcasts. You can even do keyword searches like we did a little bit earlier in this webcast. But I do want to show you, there are a couple of playlists I would suggest if you're just getting acquainted with Thinkorswim specifically. The first one, Scott already posted a link. I put together a series of 10 lessons for those that are brand new to Thinkorswim, and I just go through the platform, just explaining each of the tabs, top to bottom, left to right. And you can find that playlist by clicking on playlists here and scroll down. It's right over here, there. New to the platform, start here, 2025 guide. Did it last year. That's okay. Still perfectly pertinent to today's platform. You can click on view full playlist and you'll see those I said 8 lessons or 10 lessons. There's actually 8 lessons. My apologies. I have another webcast series where I did 10. In any case, Scott put that link in there. Let me do that as well. Okay. Let me grab something here. I'll paste that in for our live audience so you can link to that playlist very quickly. Another playlist I would suggest, though, is the ongoing series. It's not just those 8 lessons. Each week, we'll take sometimes just a theme and explore that on Thinkorswim, how to do stuff on Thinkorswim through this Getting Started with Thinkorswim series. So if we scroll down a little bit further, it's actually a lot further. Scroll all the way down to the bottom. Very last series here is the Getting Started with Thinkorswim series. And if you click on View Full Playlist, we go well beyond those 8 lessons. For example, last week we talked about 10 things you can do without ever leaving the Thinkorswim chart. And these are 10 things that are not just charting. It's other things like placing a trade. O1 Justice says, does it show us how to play stop loss? Great question. What might we do if we have an interest in a specific topic like that? Run a search. That would be known as an order. There we go. 7 essential types of orders for trading stocks with examples. And yes, I certainly go through stop losses in that video. James also goes into what are known as conditional orders right down here. Now, another suggestion that Scott and I have for everyone listening, whether live or on the archive, is to follow your favorite Schwab presenters on social media. You can find us on X. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find and follow Scott on X at Scott Thompson CS is his handle there. I can be found on X at Cameron May CS is my handle on X. And I post here very regularly. And if you reply to one of my posts, like I just posted this morning, posted a 2-minute video introduction to a technical tool known as the Anchored VWAP. So I explain how that tool is added to a chart and how it would typically be traded. But if you reply to one of my posts, I just try to reply right back to you, and it opens the channels of communication in between these live streams. Now, I do the same thing over on Thinkorswim. So just, over on LinkedIn. Just go to linkedin.com/in, and then /Cameron May CS is my handle. You can see that right up here at the top. Cameron May CS again is my handle here. And if you reply to one of my posts on LinkedIn, I just try to reply to you as well. All right. Everybody, thanks for giving me your time today. I did not see, sometimes we'll get a survey. Didn't get a survey in this webcast, but if you ever see one, if you take the time to fill those out, it's always appreciated. A final thing that I would suggest is if you enjoy one of our webcasts, you watched it and you liked it, click the thumbs up on YouTube. That's a big deal. It helps actually quite a bit. First of all, it's a pat on the back to your presenter for a job well done, but beyond that, it gives my videos a nice little boost in the YouTube algorithm. You can do it whether you're watching a live session or the recording. Just click like, the thumbs up, and it sends a signal to YouTube that you enjoyed it and maybe other people would enjoy it. So it helps more people find these. So thanks for doing that. 96 people watching the live stream right now. Looks like how many have already clicked that? 44. Nice. Excellent. Thanks. Appreciate it. All right, everybody. Thanks for giving me your time today. I will see you in a future webcast. I'll also look for you on social media, on X and on LinkedIn. But whenever I see you again, until that moment arrives, I want to wish you the very best of luck. Happy trading. Bye-bye.